Okay, so in this quick video I want to talk about something called short circuit evaluation, and this relates to the and the OR operators. So if the first operand of that AND, you can see we have the AND operator there, evaluates to false. Okay, so let's say the expression to the left of that AND operator, then the second operand or expression, that will not evaluate. So if the first operand of the OR evaluates to true, then the second operand or again an expression will not be evaluated. It will not evaluate. So this again is more efficient because it doesn't now have to go and evaluate each expression. So some expressions might be a function, or it might be a bunch of things. You might have a long expression, not just something is, one thing is greater than another or something like that. You might have long expressions that need to calculate, and that can be unnecessary computation. So as soon as it'll look at that first expression or that first operand, and then based on that, it will either continue or not. So of course, this means that if the first operand of that AND, for example, if that evaluates to true, then it will also evaluate the second operand, because now it has to see if that second operand is also true, and then based off of that, it will continue, let's say, with your if statement, for example. Now, of course, if your second operand or expression does not evaluate to true, then the entire expression will be false. When it comes to the OR operator here, if that first operand evaluates to false, then of course it will have to move on and calculate or basically evaluate the second operand or expression. And again, based on that, if it's false, that entire expression will not evaluate to true. So either the first or the second operand needs to be true for this OR to be true. Now, if the first one is true, and the second one is true, again, it's not going to even evaluate the second one. It's just going to skip that because the whole thing will evaluate it true. So again, this is a more efficient evaluation. Okay, here's a quick example of short circuit evaluation. Up here, we can see that we have a function. Again, don't worry about functions too much. We'll cover it later in the module. But I need some way of showing this. When you have an AND, for example, and the first one is false, okay, the first operand is false, then the second one will not evaluate. So I need some way of showing you that. If this function gets called, then this line here will print out to the screen. Okay, so we have an integer called seconds left. So let's say we have a few seconds left, let's say 10. So if the seconds left is greater than 0, then we are still in the game, okay? Just as an example, so if you don't have any seconds left in the game, then it's game over basically. Okay, then we have this and we get health. What will this return? This will return 4. You can see return 4. So this will basically be replaced by 4. Okay, so we basically have 4 here. 4 is greater than 2. So of course that will evaluate to true. Now you can change this here. And the big difference here between having a variable and this function is that, of course, as soon as we call the function, this will also print out, okay, as I mentioned previously. And so if both of those are true, then we'll print this out, otherwise we'll print this stuff out. So let's just see what happens. You can see that because this first operand is true, so this first expression here will evaluate to true, then that second one will also evaluate to true, and then this AND will evaluate to true. You have true on each side, so this will evaluate to true, and then that will print this out. So what happens again is that when this first one evaluates to true, then it will evaluate the second operand. And the second operand has this function, okay, so it will call this reporting for duty, and that's why it calls that first before you see this here still in the game. So it prints that line out first, and then it returns 4. So 4 is greater than 2, and then so it will print still in the game. So let's continue here. We'll change this to something like 5. So this will evaluate to false, meaning this will not print out. This will still print out, okay, because it's still going to call the function because this first operand is true, right? But this AND here will evaluate to false. So this will skip, and then so we'll go to the else part basically. So it'll print this out. It'll run this, get health reporting for duty, that is that function. And then we have this malfunction, this output that we have here, right? So, but the point is in each case, whether this is true or false, you can see that this function evaluates, this function prints out to the screen. So I'll just make this true again, it doesn't really matter all that much. And so in this case what I'll do is I'll do false. So let's say that our seconds left is now 0. So this means our seconds left is not greater than 0 because it's equal to 0. So if I run this, you can see that we'll get this malfunction. Okay, so it will skip this first section and it will run that second part of this if-else statement. Now you can notice here that we do not get the output of this function, this get health reporting for duty that we had previously. We set that to 10, set that to 10 again and run, and you can see that we get that function. You will see that this here will of course evaluate to false, so it's never going to evaluate the second part because this and here can never be true because both of the operands need to be true, okay, for and to be true. So if the first one is false, it's never going to be true anyway, so it's just going to skip the rest of the thing and jump to the else part. But I think for now you kind of get the idea for the AND. Now I can do something similar for OR, so I'll change this to OR. Okay, so I changed this to OR, and this will evaluate to true now, because this one is false. Okay, because it is equal to 0, it's not greater than 0. But this is still true. Okay, 4 is greater than 2. So again, it's going to call that function up here. So you can see get health reporting for duty is still in the game. So you can also set this first one, have this evaluated too. You can see that now that the first operand evaluates to true, it's not even going to evaluate the second operand because this OR here will be true anyway. As soon as the first one is true, then it's going to skip the rest and it's going to go down and execute, whatever is right here. So this if, for example. So that is a quick look at the short circuit evaluation when it comes to OR. Again, when it comes to AND, as soon as the first one is false, it's not going to execute the rest. Whereas with the OR, as soon as the first one is true, then it's not going to evaluate the rest because again, that would be unnecessary computation, alright? It's simply going to waste time to kind of compute the rest of the stuff. So of course, in this case, you could do some kind of calculation in here that could give you a problem. So I don't really recommend that you do it in this way because as I mentioned, sometimes it might skip that function call. But I needed some way of showing to you like that is actually the case, that when you run this, so I'll just set this to 0 again. So this is false. And when I run this, you can see it will call that function here and print this and this out. But as soon as that evaluates to true, then it's not even going to execute the rest of those operands, okay, those expressions. Okay, still in the game. So I just wanted to give you a quick demo of this. I hope this makes sense, and I'll see you in the next section. Now, just like the math operators, the logical operators also has precedence. Now, NOT has a higher precedence than AND, and then AND has a higher precedence than OR. Of course, it makes sense that you want to calculate your expressions, your Boolean expressions, basically, that evaluate to some true or false Boolean. And then you also want to do your negation, so your NOT operators, before you do your AND and your OR. So I hope this video was useful to you, and I'll see you in the next one.